Yet another episode of Riding Home. We're going to debate about what we think are the kind of the 2 or 3 most important games for Georgia to win in the regular season. I'll let you talk about the game that you mentioned off camera before to me, Matt.
Okay, yeah, so I know everyone is excited about Alabama coming to town, Texas coming to town. Those are going to be big games, Ryan. Elite atmospheres I'm expecting at Sanford Stadium. And maybe it's just me, but I still think every year the Florida game is the most important, especially considering Georgia should once again be better than Florida. I think Billy Napier is back on the hot seat. You've got DJ Lagway with a different maybe injury every couple weeks now. If he's not healthy, they're in big trouble. If they lose to Florida, that would be more embarrassing than I think Alabama coming to town and winning in Athens. That would be a disaster. And you'd have to talk Georgia fans from completely jumping off the ledge if they lose to the Tide in Athens. But I still think the Florida game is the one. You can't lose. I can't remember the last time a team lost that game and went on to have a very successful season. There may be one time or two, but it's hard to think back on and remember that. So I'm still thinking that the Florida game might always, for me, be the most important game.
I think it is, and I think at the end of the day, it's going to be one of their toughest games this year. Yeah. I think they've got a lot of tough football games. It's no different than last season. Georgia had a hard time with the Gators last year. And look, who knows if the outcome would have been different if DJ Lagway did not get injured, because he was playing fairly well at the beginning of that game.
When he's healthy, and they could be dangerous this year.
He's a very talented football player that I think could end up having a really good season. I think their roster improved a little bit this season.
Good offensive line.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me the most, I went to the Billy Napier press conference after the Georgia-Florida game last season, and around that time of the season, there was a lot of question about, are they going to fire Billy Napier at the end of the year? There was zero vibe that was going to happen in there. It looked like the athletic director, that all of the higher-ups were happy with Billy and that they had belief in him, and the players seemed to really have a connection with him.
Was that a moral victory?
I think that competing with Georgia was a little bit of a moral victory for them, because, look, there's a different vibe in that room if they just get blown out versus fighting and with your third-string quarterback, right? Because Graham Mertz was the starter to begin the year. I think it is really important, and a neutral site game is always tough. But my answer for number one important game is that home game against Alabama.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the layup answer that a lot of people would say or not.
I get it.
But look, from a mental standpoint, the mental aspect of all of these heartbreaking and close losses against Alabama, and now they get to host them for the first time since Kirby Smart's been the head coach, and that they've started this, what's turned into what I think is a little rivalry. I know it's not a traditional rivalry, but when you play a ton of championship games and games where you get a trophy at the end of it for each other, and those are dramatic wins and losses for both teams, there's a rivalry there.
Yeah.
And they share a state border as well. Look, Jalen Milroe's out, and he torched Georgia the last couple of years. He made them hurt. Ryan Williams is one of the best players in college football. There's a lot of excitement, I think, in Tuscaloosa for Ty Simpson from what I can sense online. I think they'll have a good defense. Jam Miller, their running back, may not be available for that Georgia game. He's going to be injured to start the season. It's just going to be tough. It's going to be a tough game to win, but it's going to be a night game in Athens. And if they lose that, that's an early loss that Kirby, I'm sure, is going to try to turn into, hey, look, this is going to give us a chip on our shoulder. But from a mental standpoint, they've got to beat the Tide in the regular season.
Yeah.
And I think that would really propel them and give them momentum heading into the bulk of the SEC schedule, which they lacked because of that loss against Alabama at the exact same point in the season at the end of September.
Yeah, it's just got to be a team that they beat more consistently. If you can't do it in Athens at night in one of the best, craziest atmospheres in college football, what's it going to take, right? So they really need to continue getting over that Alabama hump. I know they've got the national championship win, but you know, when it matters still in September, and they've got to get that done. So I totally agree. Could easily see that being the most important game. Number three for me, Ryan, might be a little different because I don't think it's Georgia-Texas. I think they play too late in the year. Give me Georgia-Tennessee. I think it's really important that Georgia goes up there to Knoxville, sets the tone early after 2 cupcakes, get that SEC win, and tell everyone, hey, the Dogs are back, okay? Dogs are back. We're a really good team. We just went up and beat Tennessee and Knoxville, set the tone. Tough. If you lose that game, you could definitely lose to Alabama in Athens, right? So you don't want to have 2 early losses. I think it's important they get off to that first win against their first SEC opponent. And again, Georgia-Texas, we might know who the SEC, who's playing in the SEC championship game when that game happens. It could be Texas and Georgia already slated before they play that game, if the math could be correct and things fall the right way. So the fact that it's late in the season, I think the Georgia-Tennessee game might be more important.
So that was going to be my third as well. I agree with you. Yeah, I think that.
Nice.
So without really talking about it until we got on camera, it seems like we both agree with what the 3 biggest games are for them this season.
Yeah.
Alabama, Tennessee, and that Florida game. If I were to mention another game, it would be the road game against Auburn.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a late kick, and that's going to be a tough environment. And at that point, they have that other road game under their belt, and it's not Gunnar Stockton's first time as a starter on the road. I think that would be, they only have 2 crazy road games this year, and it's those 2 games. And I think that it's important that at the very minimum they split them with wins.
Yeah.
You can survive and go 10-2 in the SEC and win the SEC championship. Georgia just proved that last year. I think that this is probably an 11-1-ish team. 10-2 is completely reasonable and could happen. But that Tennessee game, man, I agree that at the beginning of the season, if you lose on the road, then it's going to take us a while to really find out if that's truly who they are or not.
Yeah. Tough to get an early loss in conference and early in the season, but we'll see. I think that whoever loses Georgia-Texas could still get in the playoff, but for Tennessee, an early win against Georgia would be huge for their playoff chances down the road. You could say the same for Ole Miss. They both have that Georgia game circled. It would be massive wins for both. I don't believe in Auburn. I think that game will be tricky. I think Georgia's still going to have to play well to beat Auburn, but I think there's too many question marks there. I don't like the vibes going on. Night game. Kirby still has something over the Tigers. I know Auburn beat them in 2017, but it was 7-year win streak, 8 in a row. What do they have, Ryan? You can help me out with the math. You did go to Georgia.
Yeah.
But Auburn has a Kirby Smart problem. Josh Heupel has a Kirby Smart problem. Shane Beamer has a Kirby Smart problem. They don't play the Cox this year, but you get my point. A lot of these teams want to beat Georgia desperately, so Georgia still needs to play really well if they want to beat these teams. I don't want to... You look at trap games, it shouldn't be Florida because that's a rivalry, but maybe it is Auburn. Maybe it's Ole Miss when they come to town because it's week after week after week. You better bring your best or you could get tripped up, and that's the last thing this team needs.
How do you feel about the Georgia Tech game at the end of the season? This program is in the right direction.
Might be a brawl.
It's neutral site, right? I mean, not that neither of those teams have played for plenty of games in those stadia, but
Georgia's not desperate to beat Georgia Tech.
Exactly.
Georgia Tech is. You could put Florida in that boat. Tennessee, Auburn, they're all desperate. Will do anything for a win against Georgia. And Georgia knows that, and they know that's why they have to be consistent with their effort and their standard, or else one of these teams can, get them.
Yeah, look, at Mississippi State, you don't really think there's going to be much of a problem. You'd think that Kentucky going through a lot of transition again, right? They've been doing that over and over. The last couple portal years, their team seems to be very different, at least the core of their team, and you don't think they're having an issue there. They shouldn't have an issue against Charlotte and Austin Peay and
I don't think so.
And Marshall to open up the season. You look at this team, and there's already about 6 or 7 wins that you can kind of write in pen.
Yeah.
And those other 4 or 5 games are just going to be really tough. Between Ole Miss, there's a lot of hype around Austin Simmons and how he might be just as good for that offense as Jackson Dart. We'll see if that's the case. I think it'll be tough for them to replicate how good their defensive line was a year ago.
Yeah.
And think about in 2023 how Georgia, obviously they're both completely different teams, but Georgia smacked them in Athens.
Yeah.
And they had trouble with that atmosphere. I don't think they'll have a ton of trouble with that at home this season, but I think that it's interesting that neither of us said Texas because, look, they went in there and beat them twice last year. And you know that they've had problems with the other teams. Well, I guess they really haven't had a problem with Auburn and Tennessee in a while, like you said, but to write those off as games that aren't going to be difficult on the road in a couple of the best environments in college football would just be silly.
I think the Texas environment in Sanford Stadium might be the second best. Maybe it's better than Alabama. I guess it depends on where the teams are ranked at the time. But we'll see. It is going to be a massive game. But as far as importance, I think, I agree with you that the earlier games are probably more important than the Texas game. But, hey, the players need to show up, but so do the fans. The Sanford Stadium crowd, they're on the hot seat, too, a little bit. All those fans who left the Georgia Tech game, you're not welcome back. You're not welcome back. If you left that game, you can't come back this year. But they need to be at their best when the Tide and the Horns come to town. So we'll see.
Yeah, look, they may have a better home schedule and that their most difficult games might not be on the road this year, but it doesn't mean it's an easy schedule. They've got an SEC gauntlet. They're playing a lot of teams that are going to be potentially one of the 10 best in college football. They're playing a couple of teams that are college football playoff contenders, and who knows? I think the SEC is maybe a little bit more open than people think. I think that it's going to be another year where it eats itself up alive a little bit, and maybe there is one team that rises above the rest. Texas kind of did that outside of the Georgia game, but I do think, look, you go through the SEC schedules, no one in the conference has an easy schedule.
Right.
And Georgia's no exception.
Yeah. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments section below. What game will you be at? Let us know here and over on the website, dawgpost.com. We'll see you over there.
See ya.